Hey everyone, this is part 3 of the soda can packaging tutorial series. Today we will be finishing the illustration that we started in part 2. If you haven't watched the first 2 parts, you can watch them on my channel. Just a disclaimer, this is going to be a long in-depth tutorial, but I will upload a short version of the whole packaging once I'm done editing all the parts. All the timestamps for everything I'm doing in this video are in the description, so you can skip to any section of the video. And now let's get into the tutorial. Okay, so now I'm gonna show you how to create these tiny little shapes. So these are shapes that you can add to your illustration to give them more character and make it more interesting. So let's start with the easiest one, which is the circle. So in order to make that, go to the rectangle tool, long press to find the ellipse tool, and then hold shift while dragging out the circle, and that's it. It's really that easy, but you just have to really make sure to hold shift or else you won't get a uniform circle. Now let's move on to the next shape, which is this line. So you might be thinking you can literally just use the curvature tool for this, but that won't really give you a uniform shape. So instead what you need to do is go to the pen tool, click a point, hold shift and click another point. Holding shift will help you create a straight line. So now that we have a straight line, we can convert this into a curve. So what you need to do is go into Effect, Distort and Transform, and click on Zig Zag, and this menu will pop up, and this has all sorts of different settings that you can use to convert your line into a curve. So for my settings, I'm going to change the size to 0.03 inches, the ridges per segment to 3, and I'm going to change the points type to smooth, and that will give me the shape that I need. Once you're happy with your curve, you can click OK. I'm just going to flip this because mine is inverted. And now if you want to make any further changes to your shape, all you need to do is go into your properties panel. If you can't find it, go to Windows, scroll down, you can find the panel there. You can find any effects that you applied to your shape in the properties panel, and if you click on the effect name, the panel will pop back up and you can make any further changes to your settings. Also make sure that the preview button is on so that you can see the changes that you're making. If you have it turned off, you won't be able to see what you're doing, but I'm happy with my shape as it is, so I'm going to cancel this. Now we're going to create these star shapes. So in order to create the star, you need to go into your shape tool. Currently it's an ellipse, but by default it might be a rectangle. So if you long press, you will get all these options. So you need to click on the star tool, and once you have that selected, just drag out a star, and then before you let go of your mouse, click on the up arrow on your keyboard to increase the number of sides. You can also click on the down arrow of your keyboard to decrease the number of sides. I think I need 8 sides, so I'm going to make sure that I click the up arrow enough to create 8 sides, and then I'm going to let go. And now you can adjust the shape of the star even more. So if you want to adjust the inner radius, click on this dot right here and then drag it out. You can also change the outer radius the same way by clicking this dot. So use those tools to match your star with the reference. Another thing that you can do is, if you don't like these sharp corners, you can go into your stroke properties and change the settings to a round cap with a round join, and that will make your corners a little less sharp. But right now I want it to be a fill shape, so I'm just going to give it a fill color with no stroke. Now we'll work on this flowery cloud-like shape. So in order to create the shape, I'm going to first duplicate our star shape. So the way I'm duplicating is by holding Alt and dragging our original shape, but you can also do Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V to copy paste. Once I lined up my star with the reference, so when you click on your direct selection tool, and without selecting any corner in particular, you just drag one of the corners. Every single corner on the star shape is selected, so everything will curve. But if you just want to edit one individual corner, you can just click on the corner first and then drag it, so only one of them will be affected. But in the shape, I want alternating corners to be sharp. I'm only going to select the outer corners of the star. I'm now going to select the inner corners, and once I've selected them all, I'm going to drag them in. So we have this curved shape, and the inner corners are still sharp and they don't curve like they did before. So now that we're done with this shape, before we move on to the other two shapes, I just want to do one quick little thing to our curved line right here, and that is expanding the line. So you usually expand objects to convert them into fills. In the case of this line, when you expand this object, the zigzag effect that we applied onto the line will also be non-editable. The first time you expand this line, the zigzag effect will disappear from the properties and it will get converted into a curved stroke. So you can no longer edit the zigzag effect here, but when you expand this shape once again, it will expand the stroke and convert it into a fill, and you cannot work with any of the stroke properties. When you have applied effects to objects, it might make your Illustrator really heavy and there is a possibility of it crashing. So in order to prevent that, you need to expand those objects, or else your file will be really heavy and you won't be able to work on it properly. Okay, so now let's create the last two shapes that we have. So believe it or not, the original shape for this star right here is a circle. So go to your ellipse tool, draw a circle, and then go into Effect, Distort and Transform, and click on the Pucker and Bloat option, and this panel will pop up. So if you drag this button to the pucker side, you'll get more of a star-like shape. If you drag it to the bloat side, you will get a flowery shape. The extreme ends will also give a few interesting shapes, and this is a very interesting effect to apply to your shapes and experiment with them, so you can really do a lot with it. But for my case, I'm going to set the pucker to -62%, and then I'm going to click OK. And now I'm also going to stretch it a little bit vertically. If you look at the outline here, the circle is now slightly oval shaped, and that will give you an elongated star like the reference. Okay, now that I'm done with that, we'll move on to the next shape, which is this star. Okay, so for this star, go to your star tool and drag out a shape. Now you might have 5 sides to start with, but you only need 4. So when you're dragging out your star, before you let go, hit the down arrow on your keyboard to decrease the number of sides, so you only have 4 sides. And now I'm going to convert this to strokes so I can see my reference better, and I will just adjust the inner radius of my star a little bit. I'll bring it to the inside so it can line up with the reference. Now I'm going to hold Alt, drag out a duplicate of the star, and I'm going to decrease the size and increase the inner radius a little. You can also use the Align panel to horizontally and vertically center both the shapes so they are distributed equally, and then select both shapes, go to your Pathfinder tool and hit Unite to join it into one single shape. Okay, so now we'll be creating the blueberries. This is the final part of the illustration. So we're going to try and create them without a guide because I haven't included them in this reference image, but this is a really simple shape. All you need to do is go to your ellipse tool and draw out an ellipse, and we don't want perfect circles or ovals because they look very artificial and we want to give some character to our illustrations. So what you can do is you can create imperfections by using the direct selection tool, clicking one of these handles and making them slightly imperfect. You don't want them to be perfect circles at all. So just adjust the angles of the corners of the blueberry and you will get a really nice shape. Another thing you can do is you can use the blob brush tool to create a shape, and these shapes might not look perfect at all, so you can make them a little smooth by right clicking and clicking on either the simplify or smooth options, and that will make your illustration look much better. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy paste this flowery shape that we created before to indicate the top of the blueberry. So I'm going to bring this shape to the front of the object by clicking Ctrl Shift right square bracket on your keyboard. That will bring any object to the very front. You can also go to the layers panel and drag the object to the front from there, but this is just a quick shortcut that you can use. I want to make it seem like some of the blueberries are rotating to a different side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the blueberry tops to one of the sides so that some of it lies outside the base of the blueberry. And then I'm going to select both of these shapes, go to my shape builder tool, hold Alt and delete this part. So now it looks like the blueberry is facing a different side. I'm just going to adjust the color a little bit. I want it to be slightly lighter. And that's it. That's how you create these shapes. You can make a few of these. Now we're going to assemble our illustration. So we don't need the reference image anymore, so you can delete it. It might be logged, and if you have a newer version of Illustrator, you will see this log button on the side which you can click to unlock the image. But if you don't see that, the shortcut to unlocking everything on your file is Ctrl Alt 2. If you only want to unlock one specific object, go to your layers panel and find the log button and click on it to unlock it. Now you can select the reference image and delete it. And if your background is unlocked like mine is, select the background and click Ctrl 2 to lock it in place. Now select all your elements by dragging across. Some of the guides might also be selected and we don't want to move the guides. So hold Shift and drag across the guides to deselect them, so you're only selecting the elements on the artboard, and then move them outside the artboard. Now we can start to assemble the composition. So you can freehand it and create your own composition. You can bring some of these elements in and place them however you like. You can also duplicate the blueberries and leaves to create more of them. But if you want to recreate the design that I made exactly, I will provide another reference. So this is just an outline of the illustration that I've already created, and we will be placing our elements in this format. So I'm just going to drag our elements in one by one, and I'll try to align them to the reference. Some of the leaves and blueberries might not match exactly with the reference, so in that case you can draw over them again, or you can just use your own shapes. It doesn't have to be perfect. Also make sure that your reference image is locked, or else it will be really difficult to work on top of the reference. You don't want to accidentally select the reference and mess up the placement, so make sure to lock it. Okay, once you're done with the composition, you can go into your layers panel, locate the reference and unlock it. And now I'm going to select it from here and delete it because we don't need it anymore. Okay, so now we're going to add gradients to our leaves. Right now they're a solid color, but I want this to be a pink and violet gradient. So I'm going to select a shape and go down here and click on this button right here, and that will give your shape a gradient fill. By default, a linear gradient will be applied to your shape. You can adjust the spread of your color by adjusting these sliders down here, just like we did in the stroke gradient. But you can also select other different types of gradients, like there is the radial gradient, which gives you a gradient from the center. But there's also a freeform gradient, which allows you to add as many stops as you want, and each stop can have a different color. Today we'll be working with the linear and freeform gradients because I think those two options suit our illustration best. But to be honest, I've stuck with the linear gradient for the most part, but the freeform gradient is also super helpful, so I really want to show you how to use it. We'll start with the linear gradient. So select this first option, and then you can change the color of the stops by clicking on a color stop and either color picking the color, or you can directly double click on the color stop and change the color from there. If you click the gradient button, you can also get this sort of bar on your illustration, which is very helpful if you want to change the position and rotation of your gradient, which is really helpful in this illustration because I want all our gradients to follow the rotation of the leaf. I'm also going to adjust the spread a little bit so that more of the pink is exposed as compared to the violet. And that's it for the linear gradient. And now for the freeform gradient, all you need to do is place your color stops wherever you want to place them, and then just like before, click on one of the color stop and use your eyedropper tool to select your colors. Now I'm just going to use the linear gradient for most of these leaves. I think this illustration doesn't call for a complex gradient, so I'm not going to use the freeform gradient in a lot of these leaves. So now I'm gonna go ahead and apply the same gradient to all the shapes and adjust the rotation also. If you want to quickly flip your gradients, if the pink is on the left, violet is on the right, but you want it the opposite way, instead of dragging the color stops to the other ends, you can simply click on this button right here and it will automatically flip the gradient for you. Okay, so there's one small change that I would like to make. I want to change the color of these tiny elements. I want to make them slightly lighter. So instead of individually selecting those shapes, I'm going to group all the elements together first. So I'm going to select them all, and if this guide gets selected, hold shift and deselect it. And once this is grouped, you need to go inside the group. So the reason we are doing this is because our logo also has the same shade of blue that we need to select and change, but I don't want to change the color of the logo. I only want to change the color of the elements inside the illustration. So by grouping the illustration and working inside the group, we ensure that we don't accidentally change the color of the logo. So now that I've entered the group, I'm going to select one of these shapes, and then I'm going to go to this menu, click select similar, fill color. So basically what this does is it selects every element with the same fill color. So now all these elements are selected. I thought the other ones also had the same shade of blue, but maybe they're slightly different. That's why all of them didn't get selected, but that's fine. I can do the same thing to those shapes again, but I'm going to change the color to something lighter. I'll put the color code on the screen if you want to use the same color. Now I'm going to select the second set of elements and change the color as well. You can also do it to strokes, but you need to click the select similar stroke color option. There are also tons of different options here that you can choose from. So if you want to select elements that have the same font or the same blending mode, you can select the objects by those characteristics. It's a really useful menu, so make sure to use it a lot in your workflow. And I think we're done with the illustration for now. Now we'll move on to working on the rest of the packaging.